Carmen. I have my cup. I hope you have yours. You have yours, Dr. Ross?
Fine.
You have yours. Good. If you don't have yours, go get your cup of coffee and enjoy your coffee as we share God with you. Our topic today is, we talked about different things. We talked about the Word of God, how do we scatter our seed, focusing on His courage, and how do we do that? By focusing on His Word and what He's saying. And then after that, we talked about how God knows. He knows what's going on in your life. He knows your thoughts. He knows what you're asking for. He knows the situations or circumstances, right, that you're in. And He knows how to connect it all together. And that's how I view God. At the same time, I felt like as we were sharing that, it was one of those things where God was saying, well, I know, but do you know?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I thought, well, I proclaim that I know, but how many times do these thoughts linger?
Mm-hmm.
And God is saying, why are you still stuck?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, well, that's our topic today is, how do I know? Like, do I know that He's there? And there was different reasons why. I'll let Dr. Ross start, my friend Jenna.
Yeah, I don't really have a verse to start with, but I was thinking about this just with the things that I've been going through in my own life of knowing what's in here, like knowing it, but there's a difference, I think, between knowing it and actually truly believing it as if it was like true. And so, I don't know if that makes sense, but until you actually have to walk in it and face it and see it come to the words that Jesus speaks and the words that He tells you who He is and all the promises that He gives us, until it actually has to be part of your life and living it, you don't really, at least for me, I didn't really know it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know it until I have to actually do it.
Right.
Right.
And it's because it kind of sounds like cliche.
Yeah.
What world are you living in? That kind of thing. Right?
Yes.
Sometimes I feel like people hear me speak and they're like, is she okay? Does she really believe that?
Carmen, this is the reality. Come back to reality.
Yeah, but one of the things, there's a couple of scriptures that I thought about that God brought to my attention. And one of them's in Luke, and it's also in the other ones, like Matthew and Mark. They talk about it, but they all say it differently. And it was about the woman who had been, she was sick, and she was bleeding. And, all she knew is that she had heard about this Jesus and how He healed the sick. And all she knew was that if she just could touch Him, that she would be healed.
Yep.
And it was just because of what she heard. And she knew He was coming because He was on His way to heal one of the men in the Bible. It's a story right before that is how He was going to heal the little girl because she was 12 years old. And the father had called out to Jesus asking Him to come to his home because his daughter was sick. And how He wanted her to heal. But because she heard that Jesus was on His way, she was like, all I have to do is touch Him. He doesn't, I don't even have to ask Him if I just touch Him. But she knew it.
I should have been like that for 12 years.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
It is a long time.
To be in a situation, but to know the one thing that this is what I have to do is this.
Right, and I wrote it down. It says, it was Luke 8:43-40. It says, and a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years, but no one could heal her. So I underlined that a few times because I thought, obviously she had gone to different, maybe doctors, or I don't know what you call them then, to find a way to stop what was going on with her body. But no one could heal her. So her only hope was knowing that Jesus was passing, and all she could do was, she just wanted to touch Him.
Yeah.
And and sometimes we have to be at that place where we've tried everything and God's just saying, you have to know within yourself that God will take care of it. And then it says, she came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her bleeding stopped. So because she knew it and she believed it, she knew all she had to do was touch him. Mm-hmm. So it's one of those things where we're talking to God and we have to know that just by releasing it to him, he's going to take care of it. But we have to know without a doubt. And which is hard to do because the society makes us believe that someone else is going to do it, or you have to figure it out, and you have to have, yes, you have to be moving and working through it, but you have to know that when you take it to God, he's listening and he's going to take care of it. And sometimes people do look at you and think like, what are you thinking right now? Like this is bigger than the God you talk about. But in reality, if he spoke everything into existence, why won't he take care of us? He loves us. And this woman knew that he could do that for her. So I was thinking about that. And I was thinking about my own things that come up, and I know that he knows, but I have to know it too, without a doubt. I have to believe it. I have to believe it.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is like that she, I guess, had enough faith just to think like that was all she needed. Like that was it. It was just that was it. Like it wasn't anything more. She didn't like overcomplicate it. It was just like, if I just touch the cloak of Jesus or whatever he was wearing, that I will be healed. Like so simple.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm sure it was. I mean, I can't even think like what she was feeling or thinking at that time. They talk about her being outcast and. The thing that we listened to earlier was like about how she was not part of society. Like they had cast her out because she was considered unclean. Like, and she had to step forward out of her comfort zone. Just to meet Jesus in that moment. And it's like so many times we turn back and we go back to our comfort zone and we forsake who God says he is, what he can actually do for us. Because of our own like fears about what other people think or what other people would say or do to us.
And I know towards the end so when she did that, on verse 45 it says that Jesus asked, who touched me? When they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. Like he's saying, everyone's touching you, like why are you even asking? But Jesus says, someone touched me. I know that the power has gone out from me. So when you go to God and he knows it. He knows that you're there because you're believing it. And then it says, then the woman, seeing that she could not go unnoticed, came trembling and fell at the feet in the presence of all the people. She told them why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. So God wants us to let people know what he's doing. Like sometimes we do things and we don't want to share with everyone because they think we're a little weird or to believe certain things. But God wants you to make it public that who he is for you. He wants you to share it because you give other people hope. And it says here that she instantly was healed. Like she said, she told him why she had touched him and how she had been instantly healed. Then he said to her, daughter, your faith, which you said you used that word, so I have to finish reading the scripture. It says, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. So when your faith, when you know, people see it. They'll see it. It goes unnoticed. The scripture says that. It goes unnoticed. Like,
does not go unnoticed.
Does not go unnoticed, sorry. And people have to witness, not have to, but they witness what God is doing, what he has done for you. I know that I brought up when everything was happening with my grandson. And the doctors who didn't know what to do realized that they had to step away. And it wasn't about how they were feeling about it in the moment, if it was messing with their pride or whatever, but God stepped in. And that's what happens. Like you have, like my boys knew that something, God was doing something. Like they knew they had to do something and God was going to move. And he did. And he did because they believed it. I know that as they shared, they knew God was going to do something.
Yeah.
And they had to believe it. So, I mean, and we have to walk that way. And we have to walk in a way where it doesn't matter what the world says. It doesn't matter what the voices say. Boy, there's people are always going to be saying something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And God is saying, who cares? Let me be the light in you. Let who I am shine through you so that others know without a doubt that I am the one.
And even our own voice, I think, sometimes gets in the way.
Thank you for saying that.
Like our tendency to believe, like we base our tendency to believe and have faith on something when it makes sense.
Right.
Like if I can add up, we talked about this in the previous video, if I can add up put the equation together and it makes sense, then yes, God will do it. But it's like, no, like you have to believe without knowing how. Like she probably knew, like, she probably didn't know, like for her, I'm just like putting myself in her shoes for a minute of her being there, like I just have to get to Jesus. I don't know how I'm going to be healed. I know he will heal me. If I just get to him, right? Like that, she didn't know if he was going to like he did with the other healings that he's done in the Bible, like rub some spit in the dirt and put it on the guy's eyes, like what was going to happen? Like she just knew this is what I have to do. And I think sometimes we hesitate and we stop and we don't go forward with it because it's like we don't know the how of it. And God's saying you don't have to believe. You don't have to know how things are going to work to believe. You just have to know. Not like with your boys, they knew God was up to something. They didn't know what, but they knew he's doing something. And they had that faith in just that. And I think we have to have faith in the answer and not faith in who God says he is.
Right.
Like, but we don't ever have the answer. So, does that make sense?
It makes total sense.
That's how my brain thinks.
And the other thing, I had been reading Daniel, and Daniel was always different. Because he was different, God would speak to him and would give him visions, and not only that, but would help others clarify what God was saying to them through dreams. But Daniel didn't have the fear of man. He just knew God.
Yeah.
And he knew that his God would protect him. And but it wasn't just Daniel, it was 3 others. But my focus is on Daniel. But the other 3 were the ones that were thrown in the furnace. It was
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
yes, and they knew, like they were thrown in, and God took care of them. And I know when Daniel, like when they were going against him because they just didn't like the fact that he would praise God.
Yeah, he was praying.
Yeah, and he was praying and praising God, and so they wanted a way to say that he was wrong. They even wanted to. He was like the one that would go through all the financial stuff, for the king. I believe that's what it. Yeah, and so. And the other men who were, I believe they were jealous. Like sometimes people, when they see God's favor on you, they're like thinking like, oh, they think they're better, or who are they, or whatever. And so they had a thing against him because they didn't like the favor that God had over him. So they were trying to find a way to turn the king against him and everything. So of course it came up with this bright idea. And tell the king, like, everyone should just worship you and all that. Well, of course, when people are lifting you up, a lot of times you're like, oh, yeah, that sounds good because it's all about you, right? And so Daniel was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's on, let's see, chapter 6. And it talks about when Daniel, even though that decree was sent out that they were only to do things the way the king and only worship the king, Daniel freely opened the door, the windows, and he prayed to God.
Yeah.
And when he did that, of course they went against him. But he knew that God would take care of him, no matter what, because he knew God, and he knew that God would stand by him. So when they threw him into the lion's den, you know, even the king was like, I hope your God, you know, like he wanted his God to take care of him and watch over him, because he didn't want the lions to eat him. But the thing is when Daniel went in there, they realized that he wasn't harmed or anything. Like, God sent the angels in there to close the mouth of the lions. And the thing is because Daniel knew that God would take care of him. God did.
Yeah.
And so there's these stories in the Bible that help us remember that God knows, because we said that, like he knows what we're asking for, he knows what we're praying for, he knows what we're believing for, but in return we have to know it for ourselves. Just like that woman did, just like Daniel did.
Right.
You know?
You have to have the confidence in it to actually go forward with what it is. Because it's one thing to sit here and talk about it and to say it and to read it and to hear it. But until you're actually challenged in a situation, that's when it's really like, okay, has it taken root in my life? Like all the things, like the courage of God, like for Daniel, the courage, I just think he had courage, you know? He wasn't thinking about what would happen to me or what would be the consequences or how is this all going to play out. He just had the courage to know this is who God says he is, and because I'm in alignment with God, like it's going to be okay, whatever the outcome is. But I don't think you come to that until you're faced with the situations that force you to actually act on that belief, you know. And for the woman with the issue of blood, like it was her step forward to say, I'm going to go find Jesus. Right? I know he's the only one that can heal me. I'm going to go find him. And she believed it so much that she acted upon it. And I think sometimes we just think, like, it's okay to believe it, but it's a totally, like, next level when you're actually, like, willing to live it and to walk it and to not care what the outcome is. Like,
and then everyone will see the fruit of believing it and not caring. I know there's this book that I'm reading, and it's not like it's not a faith book, but the whole message behind it had me in tears. Like, it's about this millionaire who built this big boat. It's kind of like the Titanic, kind of has that twist, and it's, you know, it sinks, but there's these survivors, and these survivors are in a boat. And then 3 days later, they see someone out in the sea, and they go to rescue him. But when they rescue him, the waters and everything out in the sea he looked like he hadn't even been out there. Like, he looked good. He looked like there was no struggle at all. And when he got in the boat and they asked him how long he had been out there, he says, I've been here for 3 days. And they said, well, what is your name? Because they saw he was unharmed. Like, there was nothing that looked like, I don't know, like all of them looked like something happened to them. You know, they were injured and all that, but he had no injuries, no anything. And he says, I am the Lord. And they all looked at him like, what? And in question. And he says, well, haven't you been calling out for me? And so it's one of those things where God knows what we need. And we've been calling out for him. But when he comes to meet us, we have to know that he's there. Yeah.
And I think it's a matter of accepting it, you know, because sometimes it shows up in ways that we don't expect, or in ways that, like, we wouldn't see it. Like for them, right, thinking they took their circumstances to measure what they should see, right? We had this, was it a storm? Like, we had this thing, the boat crashed, right? Like, if anybody's going to come to us, it's going to be somebody that we have to rescue and save and help, and he's going to need care, medical care. Like, that's what they were thinking probably in their head. And when somebody came to them that didn't need any of that, like, it just didn't fit to them. So sometimes when it doesn't fit, like, we don't accept it or we reject it because we don't understand. How could that be the answer, or how could that be what God is wanting? Because it's not necessarily how I envision it. And that's where it comes back to trying to ask those questions and believing once we know the answer. And God's saying, believe when you don't know the answer. Believe now, because I am who I say I am, and all you have to do is believe, even though you don't know the how of it or the way that I'm going to work or move in your life.
So. And it's so true. And in the story, there was a little girl, and she was the only one that drew near to him. But it's amazing how in the Bible, how when it talks about the children, they come in a different way, and they accept who God is in their life. They believe it. I know I was 12, and God was so real to me. God had to take me back to that moment. To that moment where, without a doubt, like he says, I need you to come back to me like you did when you were 12. And I know I've said this in the past, but that's part of just walking in a way where you know it too. I don't want to, and like I say, like sometimes people don't understand it because it's one of those, that's why God says, like, it's his way is narrow, and even the way to think like him is different. To just know that he comes through, it's different. Like, we always think we have to figure it out, and God's like, no, like, you do move, but at the same time, I'm coming. I'm there. Just like Jesus was moving, but the lady knew she had to at least touch him. For him to heal her. God is saying the same thing, like, believe in me, walk with me, read my word, know who you are in me, but at the same time, you have to be walking towards me. Because as you're walking towards what I'm asking you to do and you're moving in it, I bring those people that should be there, and I will do it. But you have to be willing to be walking towards me, and don't give up. Like, can you imagine if she would have given up because all these people were there? It's like this word says, they were like, but Jesus, so they said, when they all denied it, Peter said, Master, the people are crowding and pressing against you. Can you imagine? I see that as things that are coming against us as we're moving forward. We're moving forward, but things are pressing against us. Circumstances, life, discouragement, not seeing it, not really seeing the whole thing, or like you've started your business and you're moving towards God, and it sometimes feels clouded, and those are the crowds that go, everything that goes through your mind, but God is, and things that are pressing against you.
It all.
And that's what we do. We press through it. We go, but we're knowing that God is the answer. Like, he will come through, especially if he's spoken. Like, we know he said it.
Right.
Does that all make sense?
Yes. No, I love that what you said there about these things coming against us, because it is true. Like, when you really want to know and to believe, like, there is going to be those moments of doubt, those moments of, what am I doing? Like, I even posted on my social media, like, what the heck am I doing? Like, I have those thoughts on, like, a daily basis, right? But it's like pushing through that. Because I know, I am 100% certain, like, this is where, God has called me, or this is where God is going to show up, like, and I don't know the how, I don't know the way, I can't mathematically give you an equation, I can't logically explain it to you. It's like beyond all of that, and we get so caught up with all these things that come against us, whether it's our mindset, or it's other people, or it's our own past experiences that tell us it's not possible, right? And you just have to keep going forward.
Right. And I mean, and like it even says here, like it says that she went to other people, but no one could help heal her. So I mean,
Yeah.
and then God will always be there, like, and you have to know it, like, you just have to know it and know it and know it and keep going and keep focused
Yeah.
and keep going because He knows, and keep going and keep your eyes on Him. But as you're doing all of this, you have to keep moving.
Yeah.
Unless God says stand still.
Right.
Because there's those moments when He does say, okay, stand still, I need to talk to you for a minute. But
I was going to share Philippians as you were talking about that. The verse came to my head about pressing on. And this verse, Philippians 3:13 to 14. Actually, I'll read 15. So Philippians 3:13 to 15. That says, "Brothers and sisters, I do not consider myself yet to have taken hold of it, but one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead, I press on towards the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." All of us then who are mature should take such a view of things. And if on some point you think differently, that too God will make clear to you. So
that's perfect.
Yeah.
He does make everything clear. And it's all about pressing forward.
Yeah.
And that's how God just makes everything visible.
Yeah. Well, you can't do that unless you really know deep down.
Right.
And it's kind of a choice. I think you have to make a decision that you're going to press forward, that you're going to believe it, even when you don't understand. And that's the challenge is like, can you do that when you don't understand?
And we're speaking on this because we're walking through it. We're walking through it. Anything that we bring here and speak about, all the topics that come up, is because of things that come up in our lives. The things that we're pressing on and moving forward, knowing that God's called us to come here and sit with you. There's things that we're moving forward, believing that He's shown us. But in order to do that, we sit here to share with you because we don't want you to give up. We want you to press on. We want you to know that God knows, but we want you to know it as well. We want you to know that even when you feel defeated or you feel like, I just want to give up right now, God's saying, no, you know me. You know me. And then I always say this too, there's those moments where someone might watch us here sitting on Coffee with Carmen and you don't know God, but you know what? God is wanting you to know Him. He's wanting you to trust Him. He's wanting you to pick up your phone and go to the Bible app. I always say that because that's the easiest way to do it now. And then from there you move and you go buy a Bible that you like, that you can read and write on and do whatever you want with it. Because that's what keeps you going, is being able to just touch, to actually physically touch the Bible. I think that helps. You see it and you read it and you take ownership of it. And that's how you get, it's one of those things where God wants you just to get a hold of Him. And but that's why we do it. That's why we sit here. Because we know that there's many times when I'm crying out to God and I'm like, God, I just don't know. But then He just brings me that peace.
Yeah. I think it happens no matter how long you've known God, no matter how long you've been a Christian or walked that journey. It's like, it's a continual process. Like, it's a cycle. And I think I shared, we were talking about the boat, right?
Yes.
And your story, you're reading about the boat.
Right.
And the process that, we go through when I feel like God always is, cyclical. It's a cycle that He brings us through on a regular basis of coming to a certain point, and then it sometimes feels like you start over, but you're growing through it. But sometimes it doesn't feel like that until you look back and you see all the ways. But I was thinking the other day, after we had talked about, when Jesus first started and He asked Peter to use his boat, Simon at the time asked him if he could get in his boat, and Peter said yes, like Peter, number one, didn't know what that yes would entail, right? Like he just said yes. He didn't think about like, what does this mean, right? He may have, but he still acted and allowed Jesus just to get in his boat. And that's how it started. And then you think about the ministry of Jesus and the through everything that they had been through, all the miracles, and then his crucifixion, and then his resurrection, and then at the end when he reappeared to them, they were in a boat. Like the whole cycle of things, like the cycle that God brings us through. And it's kind of like the cycle of coming to that conclusion of knowing. Like each time you go through it, it's like you know deeper and deeper that God is who he says he is. Like every circumstance you go through, you're going through this cycle of like God bringing you from a struggle, as far as like struggling with it, to then surrendering it, and then you surrender it, and then you begin to see God show up, and then you begin to trust God, and then you begin to know without a doubt God is who he says he is. And then again something else happens, and you go through that cycle again. You know, and it's just this continual thing for us. You know, a term in Christianity or Christian faith is like sanctification, right? Like we talk about that. But it is, it's like this cycle that you go through, and each time it's like adding another layer to that knowing. It's like, I know this for real, right? You think you know it for real, and then something else happens. Oh no, now I know it for real, right? Like, and then each time something happens, you come back to that because you're like, look what God did the last time. Look what he did the last time, right? Like now I can rely on that, and I know that he's going to do the same in this situation. Right.
Yeah. And I know we've talked in the past when we do look back and see how he connected the dots, but that's part of getting to know, like you said, it's part of the cycle. It's part of knowing him, trusting him, and us just truly knowing he came through for me. You know, and through the story of the woman, God made that public so that everyone would know what her faith did. So that Carmen would know that when you believe in what God is saying, that faith, that courage that builds up, other people will know. It becomes public because people get to see it. They witness it through me, just like they, and through you, just like they did through the woman, just like they did through Daniel. Because it has to become public for people to believe in it, for people to see. Because there's something about when people see it. They're like, oh wow, that really happened? And we can say yes. We can say yes. And God just wants us to allow him to shine through it, because it's nothing that we're doing other than knowing and believing.
And that's where miracles happen, right? Like, you know, she knew, she believed, she went forward, she acted upon it, and then that's where the miracle is. So, you know, we're challenging you to, as you're getting closer to God, just to surrender yourself to him, have that faith, because that's what it came down to. It said that, daughter, your faith has healed you, go in peace. So as you move forward in faith, he wants you to move forward in peace, because if you're not being peaceful about it, then your mind's all over the place, and before you know it, your thoughts are scattered, and then you're not focused on what God is trying to show you, and then you're not believing in what he's saying, or what you're reading and stuff like that. So I just want to encourage all of you to, as you read your word, as you get to know what everything, we have to understand that God already knows. He just wants you to know it and not doubt it. He wants you to believe in it, to believe in him, that he's moving, and allow him to put it all together for you. As you move forward, you have to keep pressing. You have to keep going. That's why I believe those words were chosen for that reason. Because it's not like, you have to be moving forward. You have to be pressing through the crowd. You can't turn back, turn around.
You can't. You just have to know it for yourself. And so with those words, I just want to encourage you that as you move forward, always remember, that God is with you, and always remember that there's hope.